Miranda Lambert has been called a home wrecker, a hypocrite, and country music's most dangerous woman. After Blake, she dated Anderson East. Then she was linked to a married man whose wife found out about the divorce through a newspaper. Then she secretly married an NYPD officer 3 months after meeting him. And in early 2026, that marriage hit another public speed bump when new rumors surfaced about tension in Nashville. Every chapter got louder and messier than the last. But through all of it, she never once said what she really thought about Blake Shelton. Not in interviews, not on social media. She let the songs carry it until 2025, when she finally opened her mouth, and fans are still processing what came out. Miranda Lambert did not grow up hearing love stories that ended neatly. She grew up watching the ending happen in real time because in her house, betrayal was not a rumor. It was a case file. Her parents, Rick and Bev Lambert, ran a private investigation firm in Texas. Right in the years when oil money made people feel untouchable, rich doctors, lawyers, and athletes spent like kings, partied like there were no consequences, and cheated like nobody would ever find out. That is where Rick and Bev came in. Bev had a way of making people feel safe around her. So she would lean into that charm and step right into their world. Sometimes it meant beach resorts, sunshine, and small talk that sounded innocent. She would sit there in a bikini with a beach bag that held more than sunscreen because inside that bag could be a recorder, quietly catching a full confession of a messy affair. Meanwhile, Rick would be out where nobody looked, hiding in dunes with a camera, waiting for the one photo that turned suspicion into proof. And Miranda was not kept away from it. When she was 6 or 7, she went along on missions, but she was never treated like a kid who needed protection. She was treated like part of the plan. They would dress her up like a cheerleader selling candy for school, and she would walk into a suspect's home with a smile that looked harmless. While adults talked and distracted each other, she would slip into rooms looking for what people always leave behind when they think they are smart love letters, photos, notes, tucked away like secrets that could not breathe in daylight. She never got caught, and she never had to testify. Still, she saw enough to learn how lies live inside normal houses. One case hit like a punch because it was darker than simple cheating. It exposed a doctor's wife who had gotten tangled up with a young international drug dealer. Miranda was still a child, but she watched adults panic, watched the calm mask fall off, watched how fast a fancy life can turn dangerous. When the truth gets dragged into the open, after a while, it stopped being shocking and started being familiar. That is what changes a person. You start believing that loyalty is rare, and you start feeling angry at people who treat trust like a joke. Then the stakes got even bigger. Rick and Bev were hired by Paula Jones's lawyers, and suddenly their work brushed up against the most powerful man in the country. For 2 years, they built a case against Bill Clinton. And those massive files did not live in some secret office downtown. They sat at home right there in the family space. Miranda grew up with the weight of secrets stacked like paperwork. One day, something happened that did not feel like normal trouble. A helicopter hovered over their home, and it had no tail number. That alone told Rick everything he needed to know. He did not stand there staring at it like a movie scene. He moved. He started hiding what mattered. Because when you spend your life exposing other people's lies, you learn what power looks like when it comes hunting. Subpoenas came fast after that. Ken Starr's team seized their files for the impeachment, and the Lambert family, who were used to stalking cheaters in parking lots, suddenly found themselves pulled into White House-level drama. Miranda took that in too. And somewhere inside her, a hard rule started forming. Cheaters were not cute. Cheaters were not complicated. Cheaters were the reason people cry, lose homes, and become strangers to their own lives. Rick Lambert had another side that made the whole house feel even wilder. Before the private investigation work, he lived a double life that sounded unreal, but it was real. He was a Dallas undercover narcotics cop, and at the same time, he was the frontman for a 1970s country rock band called Contraband. He worked patrol, vice, homicide, narcotics, and when he needed cover, the band gave it to him. It was the perfect place to meet the kind of people he was trying to catch, because music opens doors that badges cannot. He even said it helped him meet drug dealers for undercover buys and get them off the streets. The wild part was how normal it all felt to him, like it was just another day. Work, then a gig, then a sting, then another gig. Contraband through big country parties out on rural land, the kind that pulled in 30 people or 150, depending on the night. They would set up flatbed trailers as stages, and pickers would jam until dawn. Baby Miranda would crawl right onto Rick's lap during late sets, and she would fall asleep to twangy riffs like they were lullabies. Music did not arrive later for her. It was already there before she could even explain what she was hearing. After the financial ruin of the 1980s oil bust, when the family lost their house, and almost everything, Rick and Bev turned their white farmhouse into a faith-based shelter for abused women and their kids. Their doors opened to people running for their lives, and teen Miranda saw what that looked like up close. Bloody faces, screaming children, tears that did not stop. Women would sit there on the porch or at the kitchen table trying to plan their next step, trying to believe they could survive what they had survived. The Lamberts gave them beds, food, and safety, but what they really offered was a place where fear did not get to be in charge for a while. One story stuck like a match head. A woman talked about loading a shotgun and waiting for her abuser to come back because she was tired of being powerless. That line, the feeling of it, the cold courage later showed up in Miranda's song, Gunpowder and Lead, with the same idea burning through it. Miranda has said that world helped shape that song, and you can hear it. It is not a fantasy. It is the sound of someone who has heard real women speak in real pain. By the time she was 16, Miranda wanted her way out, and she wanted it through music, but not the kind that smiles politely. She begged her dad for a Nashville demo trip, and when it finally happened, it was nothing like she imagined. The people there tried to hand her tracks that felt like shiny pop dressed up as country. She hated it. She cried. She ran out of the studio and drove straight back to Texas, furious, embarrassed, and done with being shaped into something she was not. That drive back did not calm her down. It sharpened her. Out of spite and pride, she demanded guitar lessons from Rick and started teaching herself raw country riffs alone. If the industry wanted to puppeteer her, she was going to cut the strings herself. Her debut album, Kerosene, hit hard in 2005. The title track, which she wrote alone, went gold and pulled a Grammy nomination early on, which stunned Nashville because she was still treated like an outsider by a lot of people. The video matched her energy. She torches an ex's truck with a kerosene can blazing, and the whole thing feels like the barroom anger she grew up learning to control. That kind of stubbornness can look like trouble until it becomes a career. By 2009, Revolution arrived like a storm, debuting at #1 and winning Album of the Year at both the ACM and CMA Awards. It was the moment where the industry could not deny her anymore. And then, The House That Built Me proved she could be vulnerable without losing her edge, winning her first Grammy. When Miranda Lambert dropped platinum in 2014, it landed in a way that felt bright on the surface but heavy underneath. Songs like Priscilla and Bathroom Sink were not just playful or bold. They felt like regret, loneliness, and that quiet ache you get when a love story is still alive in public, but already dying in private. The strange part was how normal everything looked when the cameras were on. Miranda and Blake Shelton still showed up smiling on red carpets. They still did duets. That shiny image made the sadness in platinum feel even more unreal. Looking back, the album reads like a diary written in real time, with the public only understanding what they were hearing after it was already too late. Then came the moment that made the whole timeline feel almost impossible. In February 2015, Miranda won the Grammy for Best Country Album for Platinum. She stood there, celebrated, applauded, and still officially Blake's wife, even while the marriage was unraveling behind the scenes. By July 2015, they announced their split after 4 years of marriage and nearly a decade together. People noticed something else, too. In her major award speeches that year, she did not thank Blake, and gossip outlets treated that silence like a clue that the ending had already been written. One of the biggest problems was not a single fight or one headline. It was the slow damage of being apart too often. Blake was tied to The Voice in Los Angeles. Miranda was constantly on tour. Over time, a marriage can start to feel like two people sending updates rather than sharing a life. Sources later said the distance created loneliness and mistrust. Even after the divorce, the story kept catching fire. In April 2018, 4 years after their split, Blake tweeted that he had been taking the high road for a long time, and then said he could see karma on the horizon. Fans instantly read it as a shot at Miranda, especially because rumors were swirling about her and Evan Felker from Turnpike and Troubadours. Blake later claimed the tweet was not about her, but it did not matter anymore. That one word, karma, became a symbol of unfinished anger. Then, right when people were still trying to understand the ending, a new storyline appeared fast. By the end of 2015, Blake was being photographed with Gwen Stefani. The speed made everyone argue about the timeline. Even without a direct confession from anyone, the timing alone was enough to make the divorce feel cheating adjacent in the public mind. Miranda, meanwhile, later admitted she was not ready for how cruel the spotlight would get. She asked for privacy, and instead the world treated her grief like a game. So she did what she always knew how to do. She put it in songs. In 2016, she released The Weight of These Wings, a 24-song double album that feels like a full emotional journal, not just a breakup album, but a whole season of healing. Instead of giving journalists a neat explanation, she told people that if they wanted the truth, they should listen to the music. Then, after almost a decade of noise, she finally hinted at something that felt like real closure. In a 2025 interview clip that circulated widely on social media, Miranda said she had let go of all the bitterness toward Blake. After years of pain, years of people picking sides, years of her turning hurt into albums and silence into lyrics, she sounded like someone who got tired of carrying the weight. She didn't launch into a rant or rehash old fights. She simply said that holding on to anger had become heavier than the divorce itself. In the same spirit, a 2024 podcast clip where she laughed when Blake's name came up made people pause because laughter can be the clearest sign that the wound is no longer open. Fans who had followed every twist of the saga noticed that she didn't qualify her statement with "but" or circle back to old accusations. She just let the forgiveness sit there. That moment matters because Miranda Lambert has never been a woman who says things she doesn't mean. Her entire career has been built on brutal honesty in her songs, in her refusal to wear sequined costumes she hated, in her very public fights with country radio over playing fewer women. She called the system BS straight up and challenged the idea that women don't want to hear women. That kind of honesty didn't always help her on radio, but it made her a symbol for women who were tired of being treated like a side category. And through all the noise, the affairs, the tabloid headlines, the karma tweets, the secret marriage to Brendan McLaughlin, and even the early 2026 rumors of tension at her Nashville bar, Casa Rosa Miranda Lambert has kept one thing consistent: she doesn't lie about where she's been. In 2025, she finally said out loud what she really thought of Blake Shelton. She said she had moved on. She said she wished him well. And for a woman who grew up watching cheaters get caught, who wrote Kerosene as a teenage fantasy of payback, who spent years letting her lyrics speak for her, that simple, unguarded piece might be the most shocking thing she has ever said. Not revenge, not a jab, just the quiet sound of someone who has decided that the past no longer gets to own her.